a hallmark event that heralds the arrival of not only telecom but digital connectivity to every single citizen in our country. It also heralds the launch pad of India emerging not only as a center for high penetration for our citizens within the country, but really a launch pad for products, services, whether SaaS or others, for the world emanating from India. As I mentioned during my address yesterday, India is no longer a domestic market alone. Our entrepreneurs, our innovators, our industry have now been able to launch products and services for the globe from India. The other striking feature which has changed over the last decade is that a country that was majorly described as a services nation has today transcribed itself and metamorphosed itself all the way backward into the value chain, forward integration into services and into products, and deepened its footprint not only domestically but also internationally. So a revolution that started 2 decades ago with the advent of mobile in India today has vertically backward integrated all the way back into semiconductor chips. In our lifetimes, one could not contemplate India being a manufacturing source of chips. And with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's foresight, something that he put in place 11 years ago, that India has to be digital first, there has to be startup India, there has to be digital India. And with those goals, the policies that have been put in place, whether it is the semiconductor mission with 76,000 crores being put in place, almost over $10 billion have already been invested in semicon. We could not contemplate that you would have multiple fabs being set up in India, a area that was probably the highest level of technology in the world, based out of Taiwan and other countries. Today you have fabs being set up from India's west coast of Gujarat to India's easternmost point in Assam. And that's the capability that India has shown. Now, our growth has also been powered by India's startups. A country that had only a handful of startups 15 years ago, today has greater than 180,000 startups in the country. A country that had 0 unicorns a decade ago, today has unicorns in triple numbers. And that really talks of Prime Minister Modi's resolve to work with industry, to work with our entrepreneurs, not the role of government being a regulator, but the role of government being a facilitator. Partnerships around the table as opposed to across the table, the mindset of government changing both as working as a partner with industry, a partner with entrepreneurs, as well as within government itself, a complete change in approach from ministries working in vertical silos to ministries working in a whole of government approach. And I think both these levers have resulted in India's true capability coming to the fore. India has always been a home for innovation, for invention. India, going back 10,000 years, whether you talked about Aryabhatta and the invention of the zero, whether you talked about the invention of surgery, which is Shista, across the board, innovation and invention has been part of India's enterprise. That has been allowed to flower again under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And that's why you've seen unicorns develop across the board. Two of them are represented, entrepreneurs are represented on the stage today, and I'll call them Alok and Alok. But they have very diverse value chains and very diverse offerings. He left us with two ideas, which I think is in the DNA and every drop of blood of every entrepreneur. The first was, he told us that, remember, there's only one constant in the world, and that is change. And the second idea was, always remember, only the paranoid survive. And I think those two thoughts are carried by every entrepreneur, not every day, not every hour, but every second. And I think that's the capability today that has come to flower. Two paradigm shifts we have seen in entrepreneurism happen in India over the last decade. One, there has been a huge shift towards gender equity. And close to about 73,000 women-led startups have emerged. And I'm glad to see that in this hall as well, the people seated on the stage and myself are almost the minority. And that is the way that it should be. Because if we want to move towards from our Amrit Kal to our Shatabdi Kal, these next 22 years are not going to be incremental for India. They are going to be monumental for India. And if indeed we need to move from a developing and a developed country to a Viksit Bharat 2047, then every single Indian has to partake and contribute towards that goal. 2047 Viksit Bharat will not be achieved if only 50% of the population are contributing towards that goal. And therefore, it's incumbent on each one of us as a citizen to participate in that exercise. And therefore, this gender equity that we are seeing in the spirit of entrepreneurism is an extremely healthy sign. The second is, if you look at the Nifty or companies listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, you would find a majority of them being based out of the 6 metros in our country. Today, you will find that a majority of them are based out of Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. And that talks about the entrepreneurial capability in India coming from every single small city and every town. I represent a rural constituency in India. And let me tell you, every young person in my constituency wants to be an employer and not an employee. Every young person in my constituency has a thirst for learning new skills, learning new capabilities, and being able to adapt that not only to forward himself or herself, but to be able to adapt that to take their communities and their areas forward. So that is the capability that India houses today. Government, as I said, has been a very, very strong partner. And that's the paradigm shift you have seen in governance today. When you look at the numbers, those are astounding. 1.2 billion mobile subscribers in our country today. India houses 20% of the world's mobile population. You look at internet subscription, 250 million 11 years ago, 974 million today. You look at broadband penetration, 60 million 11 years ago, 944 million today. So if you were to characterize the nations of the world on a digital basis, with the size of the digitally connected people in a country, being the only barometer to be able to classify countries, then India would be the third largest digital nation in the world. And I mentioned this in the CEO forum today, that what happened in the 1900s with the Industrial Revolution, what metamorphosized that change, what brought about that chrysalis, it was the advent of roadways and railways. That changed the complexion of the world because you were able to connect. You were able to transport production from one center to the other. Production became global as opposed to production becoming local. What India has done over the last 11 years under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership has been to construct the largest digital highway in the world. And that digital highway has been able to connect 1.4 billion people in our country with the world. So I represent the Northeast today. So my 8 northeastern states, today 4.5 crore people, 91% literacy rate, 75% below the age of 30. Today, each one of those people have the ability to become entrepreneurs, manufacture their handloom, handicraft, semicon chips, and connect themselves to the world market. That capability was not there in India 11 years ago. That capability is not there in other countries of the world today that you have in India. The fact that today with our UPI, our digital public infrastructure, you have close to 20 billion transactions happening a month. 260 billion transactions in a year. Close to $3 trillion being transacted over UPI. 46% of the world's digital transactions happening in India. That is a true sense of empowerment, and from that empowerment comes the capability of entrepreneurship to flower. So I really believe that policy and government have to provide the runway. Having been civil aviation minister in my past life, I can only give you that metaphor. And I believe that the policy and government have to provide the runway. Entrepreneurs like ANA, Alok and Alok, provide the flight. And what they do by providing flight is that they give wings to resilience, creativity, and the indomitable spirit of entrepreneurship of everyone sitting in this room. So, ladies and gentlemen, as Prime Minister says, यही समय है, सही समय है. This is your time, and let me tell you, I'm not going to tell you my age, but as a comparatively older person, I'm extremely jealous. I wish I was in your shoes. I wish I was in ANA's shoes. And that opportunity and that capability to be able to flower, to be able to grow, to be able to set up an enterprise in India that truly will be vocal for local, but at the same time, local to global, that will be Anusandhan driven, research driven, but will be Atmanirbhar, will be self-reliant, and at the same time, will show the world that design in India, solve in India, but scale for the world. My best wishes to this forum. Thank you very much for having me.